Hey everybody, Andy from Tennis Euphoria, bringing you my review of the Wilson Shift 315 18x20. I'll briefly compare it to the 300 gram, but I have reviewed the 300 gram already on the channel. Please refer to that video for more details on that and the line overall. First of all, credit where credit is due. Mine was pretty much on spec. Don't know whether that has something to do with Wilson Labs. I strung initially with Alu Power Vibe and Alu Power Vibe in the crosses. Now Vibe is I suppose a softer end poly, and I've always found does move around quite a lot. I'll come back to that. It probably wasn't the best idea for this racket. Second, credit where credit is due. I'm stringing loads of shifts. It's not actually out yet, but it seems that people are buying shifts in mass from Wilson Direct, and I've had a lot of them on my stringing machine, and they are always coming out close to spec. Again, don't know whether that is something to do with the labs element or it could just be fluke, but that does seem to be better quality control than usual, so that's great. So the 315, there's a few things to talk about. So of course we have that 99 square inch head. We have that similar sort of oddity in the 20 crosses, whereby the bottom is so close to the bottom it's almost redundant. On the 16x20 you kind of feel like you're playing like a 16-19, and you could probably get away without stringing that bottom string. Stringers beware, it's easy to forget about that bottom one. The 18x20 you have obviously more in the mains, but it's actually surprisingly similar when you take them on court with regards to the string pattern effects. So what I mean by that is principally launch angle, depth control, and spin. So here is the 315. Same player, same day, same shoddy technique, but the 18x20 actually has a much higher launch angle than you'd expect from a dense 18x20 pattern, and you do still get a lot of spin. The 300, here we go, similar amounts of spin, actually similar launch angle. You get a little bit more plow through from the 315 that you would expect. Don't have much clips unfortunately, but I've played quite a lot of doubles with both. The 315, as you would expect, is better at net, is better from a volleys perspective. It's still pretty aerodynamic. So there's a lot that's shared in terms of that mold that is the 99 square inch steam, I'm sure, sort of rebirthed. And then of course you have the unique technology which supposedly allows the racket to bend sideways and also upwards. Now I've spent quite a lot of time with both shifts now, and actually I think that that technology is something to keep in mind, and it does have an impact on how the rackets play, particularly this 315, and how you should string them. So I'll try to explain that a little bit more. So the first thing is that it's quite clever in my view on both of the rackets, because I initially guessed the 300 to be around a 62-63 RA. I was hitting the 315 and my guess was similar. I thought we were probably looking at a sort of 62 to 60 sort of 4-ish RA. I've been surprised to find out that actually RAs are testing much stiffer, but I understand that flexing the other way is actually pretty flexible. So I think you have a relatively stiff racket in the traditional way that a racket bends, and that gives the racket a lot of power. But then we have a racket that is also sort of bending in a more upwards or up and down movement. That's then delivering a more overall soft response, and I think is probably helping the racket to deliver quite a lot of spin. At least that's my theory, and I do think it's quite clever. On serve, the 315 is a monster. I mean, I'd go as far as saying that it is one of the best rackets I've ever hit for power. Now sometimes when you're hitting with a racket that generates loads of power, you lose a little bit of accuracy, but I don't find that to be the case, particularly with the 315. Its targeting on serve is great, and because of that sort of multiple actions in the bending of the racket, it's great to find spin and slice on serve, so that's a massive bonus. And of course you have that strength at net, so the 315 will suit, I think, doubles players. It will suit serve and volleyers. In terms of baseline hitting, so I actually bizarrely prefer the 300. I feel that I can control that a little bit better. The 315 for me at times had a little bit of that clash niggle that I have, and I know a lot of other players have, typically players who are very advanced in their game, and that is the clash is very comfortable, loads of spin, but it ultimately lacks a lot of depth control and consistency in response from the string bed, and I was finding that with the 315, and it did take me quite a long time in each hitting session actually to sort of bed in and feel comfortable and start to play anything like good tennis. If I was playing sets with the 315, I would need to go back to sort of rackets that I know to play well. Didn't necessarily need to with the 300. That could be just down to it being maybe a bit heavy for me, but I did notice that. I mean, I actually think the happy medium and the best version of the new shift would be something in between. I think the 16-20 pattern is just as good as the 18x20, but I think the 300 could probably do with a little bit more weight. So I think for most players you should look at the 300 gram, and if you're at the advanced end you might just want to take the weight up a little, but it only really needs 5 grams to be fantastic. So I think the perfect shift would be somewhere in between. Now back to that stringing. So having the strings as I initially had it set up wasn't perfect, and when I restrung using a stiffer poly throughout, so using a poly that would move less in the crosses, that made a huge difference to the 315, and it also did to the 300. So I experimented a little with Luxlon Adrenaline initially, mainly because that offers some better value, and I expected to be sort of cutting it out and playing around with tensions, and it was much better. And I actually started to go up through the tension a little bit to get the optimal response from the racket. So typically I like to string at 50 to 52 pounds depending on conditions. I was finding that 54 pounds was optimal for both of the shifts. I also found that if I went with the same string poly, but went a little bit tighter in the crosses, then that actually also improved performance. So I ended up at 53 in the mains and 55 in the crosses with a full bed of Luxlon Adrenaline to have the best response that I've found so far on the racket. Now I don't know whether that has something to do with it somehow subtly controlling that bend in the other direction through the crosses. No idea, that's a theory, but my sense is that you can go a little bit tighter stringing without the worry of comfort. It is a very comfortable racket despite the sideward bend RA, and I actually think that it's important if you're able and don't have arm issues to go with a full bed of poly as tight as you can to control the racket. So a really good review again. I do like the shifts. I think that the 16x20 is going to be the most accessible for most people. Thanks for watching. Would really appreciate a like. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see up and coming reviews. I've got the Aero 98. I've also got the VCore 95 and the new Gravities coming up for you soon. Also have an exciting new series of shorts coming up, which will be quick comparison videos between rackets that you're likely considering side by side. So I hope that new series will be of interest too. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.